welcome back to the SBP Podcast Mobile Filmmaking. I'm your host, Susy Botello, and you're listening to episode 179.
We are Fade into Film.
Hey guys, how are you guys doing? We've got the Fade into Film team with us. We've got no introduction needed for Joey Min and
there's me, as always, Ryan McDonald. So
Ryan McDonald.
Mm-hmm. And let's see. So Joey's, you're in LA.
I'm
now.
Well, it was in
were,
LA.
yeah.
Now I'm back in the East Coast.
Then,
you know, it sucks. I left Jersey to go to LA, and I land, and it was like raining. Like 4 days ago. Like I was like, Jesus Christ, nothing changed. Like I feel like the weather of Jersey just follows me.
Well, because it's time travel.
yeah. And see, and then I was in LA not this weekend that just went by, but the weekend before that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I almost hit Tom Arnold with my car, actually.
What?
So,
Are you serious?
yeah, I was pulling into.
That's funny.
We stayed at the Hollywood Roosevelt, and I was pulling in with my rental car into the valet. I had stopped for a second because Brady was going to jump out, and then I was like, "Oh, I'll just move. I'll pull forward a little bit more." And just as I started kind of gassing it, the guy who had gotten out of the car next to me was now crossing in front of my car, and so I kind of started pulling forward and realized I was like, "Oh!" When I hit the brakes, and then he kind of like, "Oh!" And then he looked, was like, "Oh, sorry." And my wife and I looked right at each other, and we're like, "That's Tom Arnold." Like. It's Tom Arnold right there. So she jumps out thinking that maybe he's checking in to the hotel or something. And I quickly illegally parked right in front of a fire hydrant just so I could run in there and also catch him. But turns out he was doing a comedy gig that night. So
Yeah. He was doing it. Not you.
yeah,
right?
he was doing the comedy gig, and we were just trying to check in. But and because of where I live, you know, I don't typically just bump into famous people by accident. Like,
right.
you know, it's usually because you're going to one of their shows, or even if it's Sundance, it's like you went to their film. So there's kind of already a ticketed reason why they would be there. And I guess in the same sense, like I didn't realize that he was doing a comedy gig there, but I didn't know that was happening. But so for me, it was like kind of like one of my first times just randomly bumping into a celebrity. So.
Well, you guys are my celebrities here tonight. So, and I'm waiting to run into you next month. April 26, 27, 28. It's going to be so much fun.
We'll be there.
Yes. So we're all going to be here. We're going to have a great time. Joey and Stephanie. And Ryan's going to be there. And Levi's going to be there. He's not here tonight, but he will be back. And hey, let's get on with the show. Let's talk about some great mobile filmmaking stuff. Story is the heart of your film. You guys ready?
I mean, it's very true.
It really is. Right? It really is true. And I think it really gets at the heart of it, right? I feel like a film, we were talking last time about the art, how art influences film. And we touched on this subject a little bit, and I thought, wow, we really should talk more about this because this is really important for people who are making films not to lose sight of this. And I think one of the things that prompted it for me also is the fact that studio films, you know, the executive producers, the guys holding the money bag guys, the ones that are in control of that, sometimes you get too many hands. You have a big crew. You have too many people involved. And it's not about the size of the crew themselves. Everybody's got a part to play, you know. But I think in the pre-production and in the post-production, most definitely, those are, you know, I just saw a video from you and Stephanie talking about storyboarding and how important that is. But the storyboarding is done in pre-production. And during the production, you're focused on bringing that film to life using the map, right? And the schematic.
But there is a particular, there is a particular mindset of that. I mean, like the storyboarding, I know for, the higher up the budget that you go in Hollywood, sometimes the people that do the storyboarding and or the pre-visualization of your film isn't even part of, like, it's not even the director or not even the people that are, part of the film, which makes it a little more difficult. You hear Marvel does that, right? The thing is with me, since if it's my film, if I'm directing it, obviously me doing the storyboarding previs, it's much more meaningful because it is like my practice before I actually do it for real. So at least it still is my vision.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I've always thought that it was weird
because you have
to
control.
hear that like directors didn't storyboard some of their own films. And I can't see that because I'm like, as I'm sitting there going like, God, that person's a great director. As it turns out, it's actually like, no, their storyboard artist could be a great director though too.
Yeah. Right? Because at that point, right? Like, what, like, are they just like tweaking what was given to them, or like, because you hear stories about, I forgot what director that was, like, that walked away from Marvel. It's like, oh yeah, if I'm not if I don't get to direct it and there's like a storyboard already, I'm not going to do it or something. I forgot what that lady's director was.
Well, they do have a hand in it in pre-production themselves, most of the time. I mean, they do approve it. They do review it. They do go through it. It's just that because there's so many people involved. I mean, there's more.
But specifically for Marvel, though,
there's so many people
like that.
Involved.
It's definitely not like that. They have a company that does the previs for everything.
Yeah.
Even the fight scenes are already kind of planned out by this previs company that isn't, part of the actual filming process of the film itself, which is, I guess it just doesn't make sense to me, I guess, at that point, right? Like,
well, yeah, because you're thinking as a filmmaker, not as a part of it. And I think what happens is is what I'm saying is that everything gets diluted.
But like, if we were talking in the concept of like mobile filmmaking, though, I mean, like, if it's not the story for people to film, then what is it? It can't be like the technical aspect of mobile filmmaking that's going to. The idea of being a mobile filmmaker, it's such a it's a good entry into how filmmaking works and how you could learn it. But like, you don't have to worry about the technical aspect. If they're not doing it for the story, then what else would they be doing it for, right? I don't think anybody would be like, oh yeah, like we could get this specific shot with like a point and click device, without lights, without sound, without, framing or anything. I'm pretty sure the people that do mobile filmmaking is like always and all about the story, right?
I think the motivation sometimes gets a little diluted because it's one of the things that I've talked about in this podcast with many filmmakers before. I've got a phone, I can make a movie, I just start shooting stuff, and then I start digging into how can I make a wonderful film, and they usually start with what phone is best, which one has the best camera, and then they go and they Google it or whatever, and they go into the rabbit hole of what makes a great film, and they have a story in mind, but here's the heart of it, right? As I was saying, the heart of the story is the thing that really focus on, but we're not going to say that, oh, nothing else matters. It's all just a story. You still have to produce that story with the phone. And there are some filmmakers that don't use mobile filmmaking as a stepping stone. They are making great films with their phone. They're having the same outcome, Joey. They get it into film festivals, they win awards, they get distribution in the same places as any other film with any other filmmaker, regardless of the camera or the process. And so they look at that and they go, well, this is how I'm going to continue to make my films. So sometimes mobile filmmaking, making a movie with a smartphone, is a stepping stone, but not to go work with a studio, but to actually make better films yourself.
I agree.
And that's it?
Well, I mean, because, Yeah, Ryan, what do you think? I think I was trying to bring in something, but I guess I'm being lost in the.
I see both sides. I now that you've explained it a little bit more, Susy, I do see what you're saying. Like a person starts thinking, well, let me make a film, and then they start kind of getting trapped in the idea of like, I need the best phone. I'm going to do it with the phone, but I need the best phone. Or, and they start getting kind of stuck in that
another app.
And it's like, I mean, it's important to understand some of the technical challenges that you might run into, but overall, like. Right. Like if you're golfing, like, do you need a Nike ball or can you use another? Like where is the skill? Like, where does the skill really lie? Is it in the technology or is it in the filmmaker?
Right.
And so, but then I would say I disagree in the sense of like, I didn't necessarily like, I was making films long before we were using our phones. And so for me, it was more of like a challenge of can you make a feature film on your phone? I mean, I think it'd be fun to do a challenge where we do the whole process. Like we write the script on our phone, shoot it on our phone, and then edit it with an app from our phone.
Oh, everything on the phone would be
we
sick.
We do have a category like that in the film festival. Yeah. It's called the ultimate mobile film.
Yeah, and you would
But like after, I do have a question though, guys. Like, since you guys are much more of a veteran, like mobile filmmaker than I am, but like, isn't there pretty much like a hard cap? Like, even if you were to buy like I don't know, whatever the best phone is, let's just assume, oh, it's like the the iPhone 2000 or whatever it is, right? And it's like, oh, and you need this app. It's the whatever Filmic Pro original X whatever. Right. And all of that stuff. I mean, after you have the phone and the app, right? Like, where does it really go to? Like, would these people think that they need to buy like the lenses and the rigs on their phones?
Yep. Yeah.
So why would they be mobile filmmakers at that point? That's just like a really weird idea.
Right. And that's the trap there that you just mentioned.
Yeah. I mean, we use the
one thing leads to another and yeah.
But I thought the same thing when I see someone with
but then why be a mobile filmmaker though? If that's the case though, like why don't you just if you're talking about if people get caught in the trap of the technicality, then why stay with mobile filmmaking?
There's still the camera, right? When it comes to the technology itself, the gear, the camera is numero uno, right? It's the number one thing. You can get lights, you can get microphones, you can get apps, you can get rigs, but if you don't have a camera, you can't record the film. You can't produce it, right? So the point is that if you use a phone, regardless of all the other gear, and you plan to make usually more than one film anyways, right? You're not a filmmaker for a day. Maybe that would be a better title for this.
You're not a filmmaker for one film, right?
Right. So So you buy all these things, but you still save, and that's the whole point of it too. The quality that you can make is fluid. It depends on the filmmaker. It depends on the skill level and the expertise that comes with experience and all those things into making a film, right? And then by using the phone, they're saving the money of buying a camera. A camera is, for making movies is more expensive than a phone. And when you want to update that camera, as opposed to updating your phone, still you're going to save. You're still going to save. It's also mobile, so it's more portable. It's also, like Ryan was saying, more guerrilla style, things that you can get away with. But when it comes to the quality of the film itself, there's hardly any difference between the two. Sometimes people have to point it out. There are many filmmakers that are making movies, feature films or short films with mobile phones, and they don't tell people they're doing it until they have to. And then people go into shock. So there's so many things that are involved in the mobile filmmaking aspect. But in the end, it's about replacing that camera with something that you have or that you have easier access to.
Okay. I mean, I guess it just sounds really, I guess to me, it just sounds really silly for somebody to just be like, oh yeah, it's all about the phone that I'm using to film with. But if they've been filming for a bit, I feel like they would have shifted the idea like, oh, I really need a good sound system, or I really need good, good audio, good lights.
They do. Yeah. I mean, you still have to do that. It's not so black and white as it's like, well, it's just a phone. Just pull it out of your pocket and have a great story.
But I guess. But what I'm trying to say too is that once if you do buy like say the latest iPhone, it's not like a big difference if you were to buy another iPhone because I guess for like if I'm shooting on a Sony A7S, obviously that looks completely different from like an Ari. So and that might be like like if an uninformed filmmaker would see it like, oh my God, I need this $500,000 camera to make a movie over my $5,000 Sony.
Right.
Like I guess I could understand that, but at the same time, I mean like for a filmmaker that's like solely on a phone, like I wouldn't even. That's kind of crazy that they would spend so much on gear for their phone when I guess at that point, I feel like their brain would be thinking like, oh, if I really want to make a good movie, I should just buy a real camera. That's like a dedicated camera.
But the thing is, it's what you just said. If I want to make a really good movie, get away from the thinking of the camera is going to help you make that really great movie.
Okay. I see your point now. Okay. I get it.
I just hope our listeners get it. Because, I mean, I can sit around with you and totally, we could have this big discussion, but I want to share this with our listeners because they fit into all these levels that we're discussing right now.
Of course.
But
that's why I guess I'm very much curious when I, go to like the film festival just to actually really hear the thoughts of like solely, mobile filmmakers, that just want to progress that part or like they want to stay that style. Cause that sounds very interesting. I just, I want to know what specifically the special obstacles that they, think of or what they have to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. In all the different ways,
Yeah. A few years ago when I was at the festival and we met James and Caroline, and they'd won with their feature film, but using the phone was actually a necessity in the sense that they had already started production and the camera that they had broke. So they switched to shooting it on their Samsung phone.
That was on their first film.
That was on the first film?
Made.
Okay.
And so basically the camera person ran out on them while they had already started day one, right? They had the location, they had everybody there, and the camera person, I can't remember what it's one of the episodes in the podcast. So, but anyways, they ran out on them and they were stuck there and they were like, now what are we going to do? And they shot it. I believe they used a Pixel phone for their first film. And then they made another film with a phone. And then after that, they've been making films. And before that, using DSLRs and other cameras. So, yeah, but for them, they came from that as independent filmmakers. Mm-hmm. And they had good sound. And then James is a great editor. He's also a great cinematographer. I tell him that all the time because I think his cinematography, his style and everything is amazing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's about...
I mean, he does do stuff outside like the phone, right? Like he actually...
I've shot a few other things with DSLRs.
And they're still thinking of maybe they might make another film with their phone, but now they know how to do it. You know what I mean? It's probably not as freaky as it was the first time. It's like, well, what are we going to do? We're going to make a challenge, right, out of it. But they were in that situation. They didn't have to choose that, even though they did the second time. Mm. I mean, they're the only people that I know that have made 2 feature films on their phones are Caroline Spence and James Smith.
Yeah.
So, and they're the ones. They're back to back. They're always making a film.
They're shooting right now.
Caroline writes one as their while James is editing the last production, she's writing, and they start in the pre-production process as they're finalizing that film. They put it into film festivals, and their films are in Tubi. They're in Amazon.
They sound like a powerhouse. Jesus Christ,
are
dude.
A powerhouse. Sure. Yeah. Kind of like you and Stephanie. Yeah. I know power people, and I like to bring you guys together at.
But it sounds like
people.
they're both part of like the creative process, right? Like Steph and I, on the other hand, were more of like, I'm the creative and she's like the business.
Yeah, that's true. But the power that you guys make together is in the outcome.
Yeah. Brandy's working on script right now that she has no intention of directing. She's asking that I direct it, and I'm hoping that we'll fall into that cycle of like just one of us is writing, the other one's directing, and kind of go from there and just start cranking them out. Like I would love to get to that like Woody Allen, Ridley Scott level where I'm just like hitting like a movie every year. Just a new feature film every year ago.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, my dog and I were thinking about. No, I'm just kidding.
Like I don't even know. Like some of these. I mean, you know, Mike, like the guy I work for now, basically, right? He does like 7-8 films a year.
That's awesome.
Like, how do you? That's. Yeah. It's insane. Like, you know, I was just telling him, like, I don't know how you keep this pace. Like, I'm dying, man. Like,
well, I would think, I would love to ask him about the concentration of that because, you know, your brain, like for me, right? I do the podcast, I do the film festival, and I do other things, but keeping track of those things, that takes pretty much persistence, tenacity, dedication, and I'm not great at these things, but I'm somehow maintaining them. It's not multitasking per se. That's more of a daily thing. You know, I'm doing a little this and a little that, and I'm kind of getting there. But just keeping track of it as a story. Each one of these things is a story. You know, it has its history, its present, and its future, and it's all right there on that track. And then on this other track is this thing. And so I'd be curious to know how he does that with full-on stories, right? For each film.
It's. I mean, he has a team, and obviously, like he's been doing this since he was a teenager. I mean, you know, he's been acting since he was like a kid. Really, actually, I didn't even know about that. So yeah, he's been. It's his life. Like this is his standard now, and I'm just like coming into it. I'm like, well, what? I don't know how the hell you do this.
Most everybody that I talk to, I do the same thing where they say, well, we started on this day. And I'm like, yeah, but you started sort of a year before because you were kind of plotting and putting things together before you throw it out there.
Yeah. I wrote Married and Loving It and had it sitting on my work desk for like 2 years.
There you go. Yeah. And you went back and forth and you rewrote things. You know, we talked about Conrad Mess and his film, the first film that he made, The Fixer. The original one was 7.5 minutes or something like that. And he won in our first film festival, but it was the very first film that I received. And then I was like, yeah, but it's too long. Would you mind cutting it down? When I met him and we were talking, one of the things that I found out was that he was in the middle of production for the Fixer, and the actor that was playing the lead on his film had to leave because he got a job and he had to leave it. And so he had to recast and start shooting the whole thing all over again. And that film was the most awarded iPhone film in the world. And he was making films back to back after that. You know, he became a big pioneer in the industry for cinematic filmmaking with a phone.
Nice, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible, the stories of the people. You know, people sometimes will ask me, how do you stay the energy, the inspired? And I'm like, well, I know all these stories and they're fascinating when you go back from that. And you yourself, your story, you know, when I had you and Stephanie in the podcast, your backstory was also pretty cool too. From the time you guys met, I'll never forget that she was willing to fight for you.
Well, okay, wait a minute. Together with me. It wasn't like I just
like you were on the ground and she's like, all right. Yeah, no, but that's pretty awesome.
I was there. I was ready to fight. Like, it just hurt.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stories, and to me, I'm all about the stories and the storytelling. But to get back on the swing of this and putting the heart in it, I mean, obviously there's a lot of different styles of doing this. And yeah, you can run this like a traditional film and just replace the camera with your phone. You can use traditional gear. You don't have to buy specific gear for the phone. When we first started mobile filmmaking, the first thing that, like Michael Corbell used a regular tripod, regular sound equipment, all these things, because there was no Filmic Pro or anything like that. There was no way of recording audio really on a phone that was easy to do. This is with the iPhone 4. So he, as a filmmaker, as a video producer, he had all these, all this equipment. What he did was he just adapted it for the phone. So technically speaking, guys, you don't have to, and I've said this to many people throughout the years, if you're already a filmmaker, no, you don't necessarily have to buy mobile filmmaking gear. You don't have to do that. You can just use your phone with the gear that you have. It's just about replacing the camera, Joey. And that to me, when you speak about the heart, which is kind of like what we're having this conversation around, the heart of your film production really is your camera. I mean, without the camera, you can't have a film or a video. And that to me was like also the roadblock that most filmmakers that I met that had a dream to make a movie someday. And that was it. It was like, well, I don't have a camera. I don't have access to a camera. I got to hire somebody to run their own camera. Ryan.
Yeah.
What would you say about the heart of the film? The bringing the film, putting your heart in it. Because, I mean, there's passion, there's challenges, everybody likes it, you can get creative and everything, but the real heart of filmmaking is the story. Would you agree with that?
In narrative film, yeah. It would be the story. And I say that because I'm a film geek and I was forced to go through 2 separate avant-garde classes and watch like just scratches on celluloid for 10 minutes a piece that had no story or no characters and whatnot. So I'm kind of like, it depends on what we're doing with the film. But if it's a narrative film, then like the classic example is kind of like if you look at Clerks, where it's really grainy. It's obviously shot very low budget, which is high budget for even, I think he shot it for like $30,000. And I mean, that's more money than I have. But the sound can be okay. The shots can be decently okay. The acting can be okay, but like really it's the writing and the story of what's being told that really like helps sell that movie. The other pieces can just really just help accent it. So if you take a film like then say like Pulp Fiction or maybe even Reservoir Dogs, so let's go with that one where you have again a first time director and the story is great, but then also the quality overall is also better too. And then you just have a smash hit movie. But at the end of the day, but when we have these arguments, sometimes I'll probably be as I've done before when we were talking about AI, kind of there is that, because some people say, well, sound is like the most important piece, and it's like, not for the deaf community, but then also like there's moments where having no sound could be really intense. Hitchcock used to do it all the time as well. So I go back and forth on that, but yeah, like at the end of the day, like it's not just, I wouldn't just say it's also the story. I'd say also story structure would probably be better.
Yeah, there's a story in everything though, Ryan. It's even a music video has a story to it. Even a song has a story. A photograph has a story. There's always a story to everything. And I won't change my mind on that because I've watched enough films from different genres, even experimental films, that induce a story for both from the creating point, even if you don't focus at all on a story, the person that's receiving it is going to form some sort of they're going to connect through it through some sort of a story. And it's something that, whether you're convinced of that or not, I feel very strongly about that. And I've experienced that even in video production, even commercials. There's always a story behind all those things. And whether it's different media or writing it or whatever it is, everything is story. And that's how we connect with the media, regardless of what it is.
Because I kind of like, I mean, obviously I do agree, right? But like, I guess what I'm thinking, if at this level, if somebody's just making mobile filmmaking, and they're not veteran filmmakers, right? Like, or even if they like first time filmmakers, sometimes we don't even notice or appreciate the story that they make until we've seen like a collection of their like later work. Like, I doubt that no one would be like, oh yeah, when I saw Slacker by Wes Anderson back in '91, I knew he was gonna be an amazing director. Like, true. I doubt, you know what I'm saying? Like something like that, or like, I don't know, whatever. Like Christopher Nolan's like The Following or something like that, and '98, or Medicine for Melancholy, Barry Jenkins, like 2000. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. I don't think we really get to see their low budget efforts in filmmaking until like later on, right? Because even with Kevin Smith, and like I said, like I live in Jersey, and Red Bank is like 2 hours away from me. Like, I mean, obviously, he's loved by his town, and I'm not the demographic for his stories, but I understand what he's done for the progression of filmmaking, and I fully appreciate that. I think I'm more of a Robert Rodriguez like fan. If you think about like the stuff that he's done, like when he started with El Mariachi, it's not like it. I think the fact alone he was able to do it in a very, it's a kind of action oriented type of film. That's why people can see it. It's more bombastic, even if the story is, not as, I don't know, like the story not as like well told, like, I don't know, like Primer or something. You know what I'm saying, like that.
Like El Mariachi, the story's not complex, but it's executed really well. Like how he makes it though, and for what he is. Exactly. I read the book Rebel Without a Crew.
Right.
I have it. I'm looking right at it. Actually, I read it twice. Right. It's fantastic. Read for indie filmmaker.
Yeah, but see, even with that, like, I mean, right? Because even Sin City, the first film, technically was an indie film. They had like a garage like sized green screen room, and they were just doing it just because he wanted to show that he could do it or something. And it's one of my favorite films. Just the fact, just because of what it is, right? I love the whole genre of it.
I think I always say that if you're making films, you have to accept the fact that you're going to have challenges. And a lot of people that are attracted to film love challenges. And it's one of the reasons why, Ryan, like you just said, I wonder if I can make a feature film with a phone. That was a challenge for you. Yeah. That was your attraction to it too, as opposed to just picking up a DSLR or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Those are things, should you make a film for the industry, or should you make a film for your viewer? Or maybe just concentrate on making a film for yourself, like Joey said a few times, and then whatever comes out of it could be pretty awesome, right? I know that a lot of people in the industry make films according to the industry standards, right? The viewers, right, really don't care about that stuff. They just want to see something that moves them and captivates them, something they'll think about and they want to see again. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, I mean, it's hard because film is like one of those things where it's the art form that it really didn't have much time by itself without being already a business. And it's almost like as soon as film hit the scene, and then it was like,
that's a really good point.
It wasn't like paintings were like around, or like people were like, using charcoal on cave walls and things like that. Like it was the whole like or even sculpting kind of things. And so like, I mean, as soon as film is born, it's immediately turned into a business. And, you know, of course, if you make a great pizza and everybody loves it, you're going to want to just replicate that recipe and make it your star player. But what I think, and we all kind of know this, is that as time goes on, people can only consume so much of the same thing. And then we get a new thing. And so like, even with the Marvel thing, like it's basically like the Westerns. There was a time where their Westerns were a hot item for a long time. Every television show, every movie was a Western. And there was a moment in the 90s, like when it was Thin Red Line and Saving Private Ryan, every movie became a war film. And then there was television stuff that was now war films as well, or war like programming like Band of Brothers and things like that. And it kind of died off. And, you know, so when we're looking at Marvel now, it's like, yeah, we've been eating the same pizza recipe for so long. It can only sustain itself until we get to a point where the Barbies and the Oppenheimers have to come out and kind of like break that down. But that's unfortunate. But again, like when we complain about the bean counters of the film industry, is it really didn't have more than 5 minutes by itself until like the Lumet brothers showed it in front of an audience. They paid. Then next thing you know, it's in Edison's hands, and he just turned it into a big business. And now, you know, there's patents, and people were, there was a time where in order to even make the movie, you had to pay for the patent. You had to license the patent in a sense to even use the camera, you know? Yeah.
Right. So like, you know, the question you're saying, is it for the industry or for the audience? But there is that third one now that, like, you know, our filmmaking, you know, could actually say now is that there's some people making films for themselves. Like they are their audience. And I think that's like beautiful, right? Because like,
exactly,
you know, it's like, you know, a painter could paint something, never show it to the world, but they love it for themselves. But, you know, with movies, it's kind of like you kind of make movies so people could see it.
Yeah, like
but
you don't have to worry about, you know, the target audience or anything like that. You do it, you feel good, you love it, you know, and the fact is that if it does something for you, most likely it'll do something for other people.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what he's speculating on, is that there's somebody who's so potentially introverted like that they would never show another person the film that they made. That's different than like myself, where like I made the movie for me, and I'm kind of just allowing, like, I'm inviting you guys along the journey. You might not like it, or you might, kind of a thing, but it's possible that
because you have other people. You still have a few other people. There are people that are making a film all by themselves. They do everything. They do the acting. They do the, you know, everything all by themselves. But for the most part, there's always other people involved, and they want to see it, and they want their friends to see it, right?
Exactly. But now the fact alone that the technology is very accessible, somebody can make a film by themselves, for themselves, and never show it to the world. And it could be one of the most beautiful things that we could ever see. That like the possibility is there now. And I think that's amazing. What do you think then? Let's make this polarizing then. For you, Susy, right? What do you prefer then? For a filmmaker to make a film for the audience or for the industry? As a mobile filmmaker.
I think, okay, as a mobile filmmaker, I would say nothing is black and white. It's not evenly divided. It's not all this and it's not all that. I think there are things from the industry that you do have to be mindful of. Like, for example, you brought this up, audio. It's very important to have good audio. Those are industry standards that you want to pay attention to. But going back to the heart of filmmaking, what the heart of your film is the story. And the story is about your viewers, how you connect as the filmmaker to your viewers watching your film. Because there's always, when you put your heart into your story and turn that into a film, they're gonna connect with you through your film. They're gonna connect with your film. They're gonna connect with the story, and you're a part of that. And I think that is more powerful than just making a film for the industry by itself, you know, where you're trying to fit everything into this template and not thinking about, well, don't try to be too much of an artist. It's like, no, put your heart in it. Put your heart in your story. Because I feel like filmmaking is the best way and storytelling is the best way to connect people all around the world with a story, regardless of your cultures and languages even, and things like that. That's my personal opinion.
So what you're saying is to make it for the audience.
I'm saying you can't leave the audience out unless you're just making it like a home video.
Okay.
So if you're making a film, right? a film, because there's a connotation to video and film, right?
But what about Ryan then? Industry or the audience?
Well, my last film wasn't for the.
I love your films, man.
My last short film. I think it's if you've seen any of my work, especially probably Married and Loving It as well. I wasn't making it for the industry, so I think that I've already said it before, but like you make it for yourself and kind of everybody else is along for the ride in so many ways. And I don't know how to pronounce his name completely, but the guy who directed Drive. I saw a documentary on him, and he had walked out of a screening of Only God Forgives, and he was like 50% of the audience loved it and 50% of the audience hated it, which means it's perfect cinema. And so I feel like what really bothers me when I'm watching an indie film, and it's 90% shot reverse shot, like. Or they're doing, it's like a romantic comedy, and I live in Utah, so there's a lot of PG indie stuff that gets made. And it's like a romantic comedy. Guy walks into like a pet store with a dog or something like that, and it's all like handheld shaky cam. Like it pisses me off because like I know that all you're trying to do is you're trying to replicate Hollywood. You think that that's what but there's no rhyme or reason why you went steady, like handheld, except for the fact that you were like, if the person's running and frantic, I understand that. Like there's a motivated reason why you would do that with your camera. But when it's just a guy walking in and he like meets the girl and it's shot reverse shot and also handheld, I'm like, unless you're purposely trying to look like an indie film, but you are an indie film, so you don't have to worry about it. Like you just roll camera. So I get really irritated when I see indie films that are trying to be Hollywood and they're trying to, or not Hollywood, but the industry and follow the industry standards, because it means that it already lets me. Oh, I agree
completely.
Yeah, but the industry standard is not about having shaky cameras and handheld. That was actually breaking the standards in its time in the 90s.
No. What he's saying is that it's like they're trying to, but yeah, they just do the handheld because it's like the only, or it's that's what I'm talking about. Like last time, it was like lazy filmmaking,
and you're doing what you've like. I know it's one of the things I said last time was that I love it when somebody like composes a really good shot, and not just in sense of like the lighting is really good, but like the way that the camera interacts with the characters and the way it moves. Like, is it a 2-shot? Is it a Steadicam shot of something, or are we following this character? And so when it's just shot reverse shot, and I can tell that they're just doing industry stuff. What I know now is that like while I'm eating, again, I'll go back to the pizza reference, like there's no jalapenos on this pizza. Like there's nothing spicy. Like nothing is going to kick. Oh yeah. And so I'm already bored and I have to sit here through however much longer of your film because I just know that you're not going to do anything dangerous. Like I don't want to give it away, but there's a movie, William Friedkin, by the end of it, the main protagonist is shot in the face, and it's like, whoa, like it's almost like Scorsese has a film that did that as well. And so it's like there's nothing dangerous in this film that's going to be unexpected. Like they know the genre that they're trying to appeal to, but they don't. It's really just that. It's just like, oh, the genre itself will just carry my film into. I mean, how many times do we sit around and go like, oh, it's like just like De Palma, or just like the Pulp Fiction thing right here, or something else. So like I completely understand making a film passionately that's very similar to a style that's already been done. but I think when it's focused a little bit more, but not just be like, this is what Hollywood.
There's an intention, a rhyme and reason.
And
for
then
it.
so I see these things, and I'm going like, and they don't know how to be. Again, I live in Utah, so it's like they don't know how to be dangerous, and so like somebody putting like caffeine in the punch bowl is like really like saucy for everybody. And I just and that's one of the things that I've always criticized about our area is that you have people who like I might be shooting at night at DSLR, or I don't have lights, or we've used our the car like headlights to illuminate something, or our cell phones and whatnot. Like I love that guerrilla kind of stuff. And then somebody else does have that kind of like Levi spoke about it last episode, where it's like they have the fancy camera and they think that that's all they needed, and they kind of like forgot that like but I was gonna say something derogatory, but anyways, I'll move on. Wasn't just put your heart out there. I was like really it's in Jerry Maguire. Here, I'll use that reference. In the very beginning, Jerry Maguire, like he writes that manifesto, and the guy who's at the copy place, like who's making, he looks at Jerry Maguire. He's like, "That's how you do it, man." He's like, "You put your balls out there," and so that's how I even if it's a rom-com, like just make it unexpected and shoot it differently. So
I think you always have to remember that viewers love to watch new things.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll bump into something from like 10 years ago. They'll say, well, I'll watch that. That was awesome. But what I came here for was looking for something new, and nothing new really. I don't know about you, but there's been 3 times that and I mean 3 times in a week, right? That I've said, I'm going to watch this. This looks interesting. Everybody's talking about this, whether it's a series or whatever. And I'm so bored with it at some point, before it even gets to halfway, that I just go, forget it. And I move on and I look for something else. And I think that happens too much, and I think that it's kind of a little bit like that, where people are trying to do it for their viewers, right? They're aiming for the viewers, but they're trying to be the Tarantino. They're trying to be the Game of Thrones. They're trying to be this other thing, and they're trying to be this thing. And instead it's like, but who are you though, as a filmmaker? What are the stories that you want to tell? Mm-hmm. What is a story that drove you to want to make a movie? You know what I'm saying? And then I got this power. I can make a movie. I can be Tarantino. I can be Spielberg. And it's like, no, man. You're John Davis or whatever. Mm-hmm. Sorry if someone out there's name is John Davis.
And there's an amazing director out there that we don't know.
I was like, hey, wait a second, man. I've been watching this film by myself in my bedroom.
Yeah. But I think that's the thing though, right? Like I think it's I guess if somebody wants to make a movie because they are influenced by the start, I don't even know anymore, right? Like I guess like the type of question we're talking about, right? If you think
it has to do with the heart, of the film, you,
because like, but then again, like the fringe filmmakers out there, like I don't know, like Neil Breen or the guy that did like Tommy Wiseau, right? The Room or something. Like they definitely made those movies for themselves, right?
But how did you know about it?
Because they made it for themselves because they want to look good, and they put it out there for people to see them look good, I guess, quote unquote. And then you're like, wow, that's really terrible. But because it's so terrible, it's so good. It's good.
Really?
There was a moment when the James Franco like film that's about The Room, or the making of The Room.
Yeah.
I was watching that, and we were still like in the post-production part of Married and Loving It. And I got near the end of it where they're like screening in the movie, they're screening The Room, and the audience is laughing, but for the wrong reasons. like at it, and I started like having I don't get panic attacks, but I was starting to have like this anxiety like attack of like that. I was like, oh my God, like that could happen to me, and it's like my movie gonna, where people would just be laughing at me for how, instead of like laughing with it, right? And
there are some movies that you think that's not epic, that's not blah blah blah, but you're still watching it all the way from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
That's the story.
Of course.
And the connection and sometimes that's not visible or obvious or conscious to either the filmmaker or to the viewer.
yeah.
You know?
Well, and
But I mean,
go
you
ahead,
know,
Joey.
like,
Actually, Joey, you still have to answer your own question here, buddy.
oh, sorry. I was just going to say, like, you know, yeah, because, like, I was just saying, like, you know, with that in mind, too, like, I mean, I know I watch movies that I know I wouldn't like because there's always something to learn,
Yeah.
right? So,
I
yeah,
just
that's
don't
it.
have
Sorry.
that much time.
Actually, now, honestly, the only time I get to watch things is, like, when I'm on a flight. Like,
Yeah.
you guys were, you know, how we were talking about rom-coms earlier? I just watched, what was it? Anyone But You. And I loved rom-coms. I don't know if I'm a rom-com guy anymore, but man, watching like a rom-com now, like that was made now, it doesn't feel as good as it used to, or it could just be like I'm bitter and I'm heartbroken and bitter, so maybe I don't feel the rom-com part. But you know,
You're funny.
but I was watching it and I'm like, I was like saying to myself, like, what the fuck? This doesn't make any fucking sense. No guy would say that. No girl would say that. And I just realized I'm just a bitter old man. You know?
Yeah, it also depends on our mood as you know, viewers, right? Just
Right.
human beings wanting to, you know, like I've said before, is sometimes you go in to watch a movie because you want to escape wherever you happen to be at that moment. You're like, I need a break, man. I need a different world. I need somebody else's life to dip into. And you watch a movie. And by the end, if you forget everything, you forget where you are, you forget everything. You're just completely consumed by that film, all the aspects of it. Sometimes it happens to be that it's got great music to go with it that brings you your own nostalgic feelings or whatever it is, your own little sub-story of your own romantic experiences, you know, just things like that. I was sobbing the other day over some show that I started watching, and I fell in love with the characters, and then they start killing characters. And no, it wasn't The Walking Dead. But I was sobbing, and I was like, why am I still watching this? Who likes to cry? Who likes to feel sad? But we do it when it's a movie, though. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I'm sure there's a psychological study for that, but yeah, I guess we want to feel, right?
What you said there, I don't. As far as like watching a movie just to escape and whatnot, the way you described it was kind of like very different than what I'm about to say. Because like there's been times where I've been around people who they just want they want to watch a movie to escape. Is really like their excuse to watch like a really like brainless movie. No. And I get really irritated sometimes. I'm like, no, but I want to feel something. If so. You know, there's some people who don't want to watch like Schindler's List because it's too heavy, and it's like, I know, but that's kind of the point, though. Like, or yeah, like when Brandy and I first saw Uncut Gems, like the whole movie's like anxiety ridden, and I loved it. When we walked out of it, she was like, I did not like that movie, but I know her, and I know like that she knows a good movie, and I thought to myself, I was like, she doesn't like it now because of how anxiety ridden it is. But I was like, I bet she'll love it tomorrow. And then the next day, she came back home from work and she's like, man, I've been thinking about that movie all day. And that was so good. And I was like, there's the movie Funny Games, and the way it ends, I was pissed. I was like, what in the hell just happened? Like nobody good, everybody bad survives, everybody good dies. And I was like, what in the... Yeah, and I was like, what the hell? And I was like watching the credits going like, and then all of a sudden I realized, I was like, they're purposely trying to piss you off, Ryan. I was like, that's okay, yep. And I was like, now I'm like.
It's like the villain. The villain character you know, who changes and you're like, you hate this person. They're so whatever, right? And you almost feel anxiety over it. Like, I want to punch that person or something. Maybe not me, but, but you know, like I really despise this person. And somehow that villain starts to have emotions and feelings that you connect to. And that's what a good story does. It really connects. It's an escape, but it's an escape from your own feelings, your own emotions. We're always here. You know what I'm saying? We're always feeling something for the most part, whether it's happy or sad or even melancholy, whatever it could be. And escaping into another world, another character, somebody else's problems, somebody else's, whatever the story is something that I think, yeah, Joey, in a way, it's kind of psychological. But we have an attraction to doing that. Otherwise, movies would never make any money, obviously. No one would pay to go see that at a theater either. There's some movies that I go, I'm not watching that in a theater. It's too emotional. I don't want to be walking out of there all, crying.
That's funny.
But there are movies, even at the festival. There have been films at the festival, Joey, where I'm sitting in the back and I'm like crying and I'm like, oh my God, stop it. Because you're like, you got to get out there and speak to people in a second here.
Well, that's good. Wouldn't that make the filmmakers be like really happy to see you?
Yeah, I think the filmmakers that come to my film festival love to see me sobbing and crying. I think that, but for sure, yes, it's a testament to how good their film was. So be prepared, Joey, when you come. Bring your Kleenex or whatever. Bring a box.
I won't be ashamed to sob if it makes me sob. I'll cry. I'll do the whole snotty face and everything.
Yeah, I do let myself feel stories and movies and things like that because that's why I watch them. So I don't have the reservation of that. But I'm okay with feeling the things that I feel for them. But I also understand there are people with different backgrounds and different experiences that they can't watch certain films because it triggers issues for them that they may have. And that there are some films that can really trigger things, even something that you watch today as opposed to 40 years ago. All right, say goodbye to our listeners.
See ya.
All right, bye guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah.